Hi everyone! In this video, we're going to put to practice everything that we've learned so far about graphs of the sine and cosine functions. Here's the graph that we'll need to use to identify the function. And the answer that we're going to obtain at the end will have one of these forms. So it's going to be our sine or cosine function. And we also need to figure out values of a and b. Let's do this step by step. First, let's determine if this graph represents sine or cosine function. For that, we need to look at the y-intercept. We know that sine function crosses the y-axis at the origin, and cosine function crosses the y-axis anywhere else. Well, since we can see that the y-intercept is here, not at the origin, that means that we're looking at the cosine function. Let's move on. Now let's determine if it's reflected or not reflected, which will determine the sign of number a. It's going to be either positive or negative. We know that the difference between reflected versus not reflected cosine graphs is whether their y-intercept is positive or negative. Since the y-intercept is negative, that means that we're looking at the reflected cosine function. So yes, it's reflected, and that means that the sign of a will be negative. It's going to be a negative number. Next, let's find the amplitude. The amplitude is the distance from the horizontal axis to the maximum or minimum point. And as we can see here, in this case, the amplitude is 3 units. And now step 2 and 3 together will tell us what value of a is. A will be negative 3. Next, let's find the period. Why do we need it? Well, to calculate b, the frequency, which is going to be the next step. But let's first talk about the period. Period is the length of one cycle. And as I can see on the graph, the first cycle starts at the minimum point, so it should stretch until the next minimum. And the length of that segment along the x-axis is 4 pi over 9. Once we identify the period, we're ready to calculate the frequency. The frequency is found by using the following formula. We take 2 pi and divide it by the period. So that means that we're going to get 2 pi over, the period is 4 pi over 9. So to divide, I'll have to take 2 pi, put it over 1, and multiply it by the reciprocal of the denominator. So 9 over 4 pi. Once I divide 2 pi, I'll get 9 over 2. And we usually keep frequency in the form of an improper fraction. So it's going to stay like that, 9 over 2. Well, we're now ready to write down the function. That's going to be step 6. That's going to be f of x. Then, and I'm following this as the guideline. Then I have to state what a is. Well, we determined that a is negative 3. Negative 3. Then is it sine or cosine? Well, we determined that it's cosine. And then I have to put bx. We found that b is 9 over 2. So I'm writing 9 over 2x. So that's the function that describes the given graph. And these are the steps you take to determine the function.